Michael Hartman had become what the world admired most, a billionaire. His face appeared on magazine covers, his name echoed in business circles, and his mansion on the hill became a symbol of triumph. To outsiders, he was the man who defied fate, who turned despair into glory. Yet behind the glass walls of his palace, Michael lived in silence with a truth no one else could see. His wealth was not victory, it was a debt. Every car in the driveway, every chandelier in his halls, every headline praising his success reminded him of the bargain he had made in the shadows. Sophia was healthy, her laughter filling the rooms once again. But to Michael, each sound of joy was both salvation and torment. For deep inside, he knew the price of $1 billion had not been fully paid, and the collectors would come. The night was heavy, with fog swallowing the streets at the edge of the city. Michael Hartman moved with careful steps, his heart beating against his ribs like a drum of warning. The directions had been clear: follow the old railway tracks until the warehouses appeared, then wait. He knew this was not an ordinary meeting. These men were not businessmen, not investors. They were collectors, and Michael's fortune had been built on the shadow of their generosity. He pulled his coat tighter as the wind carried the smell of rust and damp stone. The warehouse loomed before him, its metal doors half open, groaning as if protesting the secrets it held. A dim light spilled through the cracks, slicing through the fog. Michael hesitated, every instinct screaming to turn back. Yet the thought of Sophia, the sound of her laughter, the sight of her running across the garden, pushed him forward. Inside, the silence was suffocating. The vast emptiness of the warehouse seemed to swallow his footsteps, each echo sounding louder than the last. He felt small, as though the very building itself was watching him. Then, as he stepped into the center, he saw them. 3 figures waiting in the glow of a single bulb. Their faces shadowed, their posture unyielding. Michael swallowed hard. He knew the time had come. Michael stepped fully inside, his shoes crunching against the cracked concrete floor. The air smelled of dust and old iron, a reminder of years when the warehouse had been alive with work. Now it was a tomb, and he its uninvited guest. At the far end of the room, under the flicker of a swaying bulb, 3 men sat at a wooden table. Their suits were black, sharp against the decaying backdrop. Contracts lay scattered before them, stacks of paper, maps, sealed envelopes. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to remind Michael that nothing in this world came without cost. Michael stopped several feet away, his body rigid. The men did not speak at first. They simply stared, their silence heavier than words, their presence pressing down on him like a weight. He tried to meet their eyes, but each time he did, he felt the ground beneath him grow less steady. Finally, the man in the middle leaned forward, resting his gloved hands on the table. His voice was smooth, almost polite, yet laced with steel. "Mr. Hartman, you've done well. The world calls you a billionaire now. But tell me, do you remember the night you asked us for a favor?" Michael's throat tightened. He remembered. He remembered too well. Michael's lips trembled before he could form words. He stood frozen, like prey caught in the gaze of a predator. The 3 men remained, still, their faces calm, yet unreadable masks of power that revealed nothing and demanded everything. The contracts on the table rustled faintly as the wind crept in through the open door like whispers of judgment. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to say he didn't remember, to insist that his fortune had been earned by sweat, by vision, by sleepless nights. But the truth pressed against his chest like an iron chain. He remembered the night too clearly, the desperation, the prayer, the cloaked figure who offered him salvation at a price unspoken. "Yes," Michael finally muttered, his voice hoarse. "I remember." The man in the center leaned back, a faint smile curling at the edge of his lips. It wasn't a smile of kindness, but of confirmation. "Good. Then you also remember what we told you? Blessings without cost do not exist. You asked us for life, Mr. Hartman, and you received it. Your daughter breathes, your daughter laughs, but now the time has come to fulfill your end." Michael's chest tightened as if invisible hands were pressing him down. He clenched his fists, trying to gather courage, but his body betrayed him with a tremor. He thought of Sophia's bright eyes, her laughter echoing in the garden. To lose her now was unthinkable. Yet he knew this was not a request. It was the reading of a debt. The silence after those words was deafening. Michael's mind raced, searching for a way out, but every path he imagined collapsed into darkness. The men were not here to negotiate, and he knew it. They were here to claim what was theirs. The man on the left finally spoke, his voice low and cutting through the air like a blade. "You enjoyed the fruits of our arrangement, Mr. Hartman. Your wealth, your empire, your reputation, all built on the foundation of a single miracle. Now we require what you promised: loyalty, obedience, and payment. Michael's breath caught. Payment. The word echoed in his skull like a bell tolling the end of time. His eyes darted to the contracts on the table, the ink dark against yellowed paper, as if the pages themselves were alive and waiting for his signature. No, Michael whispered almost to himself. Not my daughter, please, not her. The men exchanged glances, none of them smiled now. The man in the center leaned forward again, his voice calm but merciless. You misunderstand, Mr. Hartman. We never asked for your daughter's life. We gave that to you freely. What we ask for is yours. Michael's breath froze in his chest. His own life, the fortune, the empire, the glory. It had all been a countdown to this moment. Michael's knees weakened as the words sank into his soul. Your life. The phrase repeated in his head, echoing louder than the creaks of the warehouse, louder than the swaying bulb. His life was no longer his own. It had been signed away the night he made the bargain, though he had pretended all these years that it wasn't true. The man in the middle lifted a sheet of paper from the pile. Its parchment was thick, older than any ordinary contract, and the ink that marked it shimmered faintly under the dim light. Michael recognized his own signature at the bottom, written in desperation all those years ago. The memory struck him like a dagger, the shaking of his hand, the salt of tears on his lips, the desperate promise he had scrawled to save Sophia. You see, the man said smoothly, it is not we who bind you, Mr. Hartman. It is you. You bound yourself. Michael's breath quickened. He wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that he hadn't understood. But deep inside he knew it didn't matter. These men did not care about fairness. They cared only for balance, and the scale was tipped against him. He took a shaky step forward, his voice breaking. There must be another way. Anything, take my money, take the mansion, take all of it, but not this. The man on the left leaned back, his eyes narrowing. Your wealth means nothing to us. Paper, glass, and steel. We don't collect things, Mr. Hartman. We collect people. A sharp silence filled the warehouse. Michael's chest heaved as he tried to steady himself, but the weight of their words crushed him. He realized then that he was not negotiating for wealth or comfort. He was negotiating for the scraps of his own soul. The man on the right finally moved. Until now he had been silent, his face hidden in shadow. Slowly he reached into his coat and pulled out a small black box. He placed it gently on the table with a deliberate click that echoed across the room. Michael's eyes fixed on it, his stomach turning cold. With a slow motion, the man opened the box. Inside lay a ring of iron, dark and etched with symbols Michael could not understand. It pulsed faintly, as if alive, as if waiting. This, the man said in a voice deep and resonant, is the mark. It will bind you to us completely. Refuse it and we will take what remains of you by force. Michael's throat tightened. He felt his entire body revolt at the sight of it, yet he could not look away. He thought of Sophia, her laughter, her warmth, and a shiver ran through him. Every instinct screamed that putting on that ring would strip him of everything he was. But not wearing it would mean something far worse. His voice broke, almost a whisper, God help me. Michael's heart hammered against his ribs as the ring glowed faintly on the table. The very air around it seemed to pulse, each beat pressing against his chest like an invisible hand. His lips trembled as he shook his head, stepping back slowly. No, he whispered at first, then louder. No, I won't wear it. I won't give myself to you. The men didn't flinch. Their faces remained stone-like, eyes watching him as though he were nothing more than a foolish child throwing a tantrum. The man in the middle leaned forward, folding his hands together, his voice calm and measured. Mr. Hartman, you have no choice. Refusal is nothing more than a delay, and delay only brings suffering. Michael's breath grew ragged, his vision swam with panic. He thought of Sophia, her innocent face flashing before his eyes, her laughter echoing in his mind. For years he had lived with the illusion that the bargain had been buried, that the debt would never be called. But here it was, alive and waiting, taking form in this cursed ring. He clenched his fists. I would rather die than wear that thing. The man on the right smirked for the first time. His voice was a low growl. Then death can be arranged. The sound of chairs scraping echoed as the men shifted slightly, a predator's movement subtle but threatening. Michael felt the cold realization they were not bound by human laws nor by mercy. He was standing on the edge of something far darker than death. The air snapped with sudden violence. Michael flinched as the man on the left slammed his hand against the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the cavernous warehouse. The contracts fluttered upward, paper scattering like frightened birds before settling on the damp concrete. You dare defy the order? The man hissed, his calm mask shattered into fury. His voice carried a weight that shook the walls as if the building itself quivered at his anger. Michael's pulse raced. Fear clawed at his insides, yet something else burned beneath it, rage. For too long he had been shackled by his past, haunted by guilt and silence. Now, as these men cornered him with their chains, he felt the spark of defiance flare. "I am not your slave," he spat, his voice trembling but resolute. The man on the right rose slowly from his chair. His shadow stretched unnaturally long across the floor, reaching toward Michael like dark fingers. His hand hovered just above the box with the ring, and for a moment, the glow intensified, as if it had sensed the coming violence. Michael stumbled backward, eyes darting for an exit. But the warehouse was vast and empty, the single door behind them blocked by shadows. He was trapped. Then, in a sudden burst of desperation, he grabbed the nearest object he could reach. A rusted iron pipe leaning against the wall. His hands shook, but he raised it high, a feeble weapon against the impossible. The three men exchanged glances, and for the first time they smiled. The silence shattered. Michael let out a raw cry as he swung the iron pipe through the air, the metal whistling in desperation. The man on the right, towering and calm, moved with inhuman swiftness. His hand shot out, catching the pipe mid-swing as though it were nothing more than a child's toy. The force of the stop rattled Michael's bones. He staggered, gripping the pipe with all his strength. But it was useless. The man's grip was unyielding like steel. A cruel grin twisted across the man's face. "Pathetic," he murmured. With a flick of his wrist, the pipe was wrenched from Michael's hands and flung across the warehouse, clattering against the concrete floor with a hollow echo. Michael stumbled backward, chest heaving, eyes wide with terror. His only weapon was gone. The men advanced slowly, like wolves savoring the chase. Their footsteps echoed, measured, deliberate, impossible to escape. And yet something sparked within Michael's veins. For the first time in years, he felt rage stronger than his fear. His fists clenched. He was tired of being hunted, tired of running. Even if this night ended in his death, he would not kneel. He spat blood on the floor, his voice hoarse but defiant. "Then kill me, but I'll never bow to you." The man in the center tilted his head, eyes narrowing with interest. The leader finally rose. His chair scraped back, a sound sharp as a blade. Unlike the others, his movements were calm, almost deliberate, as though he already knew how the night would end. His eyes locked onto Michael, gleaming with a predatory patience. "You think death will free you, Mr. Hartman?" His voice was soft, yet it filled the warehouse like thunder. "Death does not break contracts. Death is merely collection." Michael's knees threatened to give way. The weight of those words crushed his chest, squeezing every ounce of defiance from his lungs. He saw in the leader's gaze the truth. There was no escape, only submission or destruction. The leader reached into his coat and pulled out a second box, smaller than the first. He placed it gently on the table, opening it with care. Inside was not another ring, but a pocket watch, its glass cracked, its hands frozen at midnight. The ticking began anyway. The sound drilled into Michael's skull, loud and rhythmic, though the hands didn't move. Each tick was like a heartbeat, out of place, foreign and wrong. "Your time has always been ours," the leader said. "Now it runs out." Michael clutched his head, eyes wide in terror, as the ticking grew louder, reverberating off the walls, drowning out even his own breath. The warehouse seemed to shrink, pressing in on him, shadows curling at the edges like living things. He fell to his knees, gasping for air, realizing that his refusal had only awakened something far worse. The ticking grew louder. At first it was steady, tick, tick, tick. But then it fractured, multiplying into dozens of ticks, echoing at once as though countless clocks surrounded Michael, all beating against his mind. He clutched his head, teeth grinding, his eyes darting wildly around the warehouse. But the room was no longer the same. The walls wavered, bending and stretching like warped glass. The floor rippled beneath him as if it were liquid, swallowing the scattered contracts into its surface. Michael gasped. The three men remained in their places, but their shapes distorted, elongated, shadows twisting unnaturally along the walls. Their faces blurred for a moment, revealing hollow sockets where eyes should be gaping, maws where mouths belonged. He shut his eyes tight. This isn't real. This isn't real. But the ticking drilled deeper, louder. He opened his eyes again and saw something that froze his blood. The pocket watch on the table had grown larger, impossibly large, its cracked face now the size of a door, its hands trembling, though still locked at midnight. And from within the fractured glass, a faint whisper seeped out, voices layered over each other like 1,000 whispers in the dark. Michael, time is ours. The warehouse shook, dust falling from the rafters. Michael staggered to his feet, swaying, his chest heaving, his sanity fraying with every second. Michael staggered backward until his shoulders slammed against the damp wall. His breath came in ragged bursts, fogging the air in front of him. The ticking became unbearable, fusing with whispers that now seemed to come from inside his skull. Your wealth, your empire, your daughter's smile, all bought with time that was never yours. And now the payment is due. Michael shook his head violently, fists pressed against his ears, but it was useless. The voices were everywhere. The shadows on the walls curled inward, twisting into skeletal hands that clawed at him, reaching for his throat. He let out a broken cry. Stop! Please stop! The leader stepped closer, his figure sharp against the chaos and touched by the distortions that consumed the warehouse. His voice cut clean through the whispers, steady and commanding. You cannot fight this, Michael. You signed in blood. Every breath you've taken since was borrowed. Michael's knees buckled. He slid down the wall, his eyes glistening with tears. For the first time, his defiance cracked into desperation. Take my money, take everything. Just leave me and my daughter out of this. The leader paused, his expression unreadable. The whispers fell silent for a heartbeat, the warehouse still, except for the low, constant tick, tick, tick. Then slowly he smiled. The silence stretched unnaturally long. The ticking of the broken watch filled the void, each beat hammering inside Michael's chest. Then, without warning, the shadows on the wall shifted. Michael's breath caught in his throat. From the curling darkness, a smaller shape emerged, fragile, familiar. The outline of a child. He blinked hard, refusing to believe, but as the shape sharpened, his heart plummeted. It was Sophia. His daughter's delicate figure flickered in the shadows. Her head tilted, her hair tied in the little bow she always wore. Her voice, soft and distorted, seeped from the walls. Daddy, why are you crying? Michael's eyes flooded. He staggered forward, reaching out with trembling hands, his entire body quaking. Sophia! No, you're not real. You can't be here. But the shadow stepped closer, the tiny hand stretching toward him, her face flickering between innocence and a hollow-eyed void. The men did not move. They only watched. The leader's smile widened. We do not need to touch her, Mr. Hartman. The contract binds blood. Your empire was built on her life as much as your own. Michael screamed, a guttural sound that tore from his chest. His knees buckled as he collapsed, slamming his fists against the floor. No, she doesn't deserve this. Don't drag her into this. The shadow of Sophia only tilted its head again, whispering, Time is running out, Daddy. The leader stepped forward at last, his polished shoes tapping softly against the concrete. He stood over Michael's crumpled form, his shadow stretching long, devouring what little light remained. You built your fortune, he said calmly, with promises written in your blood. You swore to deliver when the hour came. That hour is now. He crouched low, his face inches from Michael's. His eyes gleamed with something ancient, something far beyond human cruelty. He whispered, If you refuse, then she will pay your debt. Michael froze. His breath stuttered in his throat. The words cut deeper than any blade. His mind filled with Sophia's laughter. Her fragile body curled beneath blankets. Her smile as she clutched her teddy bear. All of it at risk because of him. No, his voice broke into sobs. No, please. Take me. Take my life, my soul, my everything, but not her. The leader straightened, towering over him, then turned his gaze toward the shadow of Sophia flickering on the wall. With a simple nod, the distorted child's face twisted, its hollow eyes fixing on Michael. The whispers rose again, layered, endless. Blood for blood. Time for time. Michael slammed his fists against the floor, his voice hoarse, his soul cracking. I'll do it. I'll wear the ring. The warehouse fell silent. The ticking stopped. For the first time, the three men smiled together. Michael sat in his office, the city skyline glowing faintly through the wide glass windows. Papers scattered across his desk, numbers, contracts, promises. He could barely understand anymore. Every tick of the clock on the wall echoed like a countdown to something inevitable. His hands trembled as he thought of Sophia's smile, her fragile breathing, her tiny hands gripping his finger. The last time he saw her awake, the deal he had made with the men in the warehouse was no longer just about money. It was about time, about how much of his soul he had already bartered away. In that silence, Michael realized the terrifying truth. He was not in control anymore. He was being pulled deeper into a world where every choice came with a shadow, and every shadow whispered of consequences he could not yet see. That night's sleep did not come easily. Michael found himself back at the hospital, standing by Sophia's bedside, his hand resting on the rail of the bed. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor filled the silence, each tone a cruel reminder of how fragile her life was. He whispered promises he wasn't sure he could keep, promises that he would find a way, that she would live, that this was not the end. In her small half-conscious murmur, Sophia called him Daddy, and for a brief second the world stopped. Michael's chest tightened with both love and unbearable fear. As he kissed her forehead, he felt the heavy weight of the unseen deal pressing down harder. It was not just a contract signed in ink, it was a chain, binding his soul to powers that demanded more than he could ever pay. The next day, Michael walked through the crowded streets, but the world felt distant, almost unreal. People rushed past him, faces blurred in the morning haze, yet he felt like an outsider trapped in a different reality. Every billboard, every neon sign, every passing car seemed to whisper of money, of the invisible strings that controlled the city. He knew those men in black suits weren't just businessmen, they were something darker, something woven into the very veins of power that kept the city alive. As he tightened his grip on his coat, Michael realized that every step forward was no longer his own. It was dictated by the deal he had made. He was living on borrowed time, walking in borrowed freedom. And somewhere in the chaos of the streets, he swore he could feel unseen eyes watching him, waiting for the moment he would stumble. That night, the city's lights burned like 1,000 eyes, and Michael stood once again at the edge of the warehouse district. The fog clung to the ground like a living thing, swallowing the sound of his footsteps. He had not been summoned, yet something inside him had dragged him back there, as if the deal itself was pulling on an invisible chain around his neck. The wooden doors of the warehouse creaked open on their own, as if expecting him. Inside, the single bulb swung gently, casting shifting shadows across the damp brick walls. And though the room appeared empty, Michael felt the heavy presence of the men in black suits watching, waiting unseen. The silence was suffocating, filled with the weight of promises yet to be claimed. For the first time, Michael whispered into the emptiness, his voice shaking, "What do you want from me now?" Michael stepped into the warehouse, the wooden floor groaning under his weight. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of rust and mold. The swinging bulb above him flickered as if struggling to stay alive. His breath was shallow, every exhale forming a faint cloud in the cold air. And then it happened. From the far corner of the warehouse, 3 chairs scraped against the floor, though no one sat in them. Shadows gathered there, thick and unnatural, like smoke twisting into the shape of men in suits. Michael froze, his hands trembling at his sides. He realized the deal was not simply with men of flesh and bone, but with something far more sinister, something that could not be escaped by contracts or signatures. The warehouse was alive with whispers circling him, pressing closer, reminding him that every promise carried a price, and that his payment was coming due. Rising into a chorus that filled the warehouse, echoing in Michael's mind until he pressed his hands against his ears. The bulb above him flared one last time before shattering, plunging the room into near darkness. In that suffocating void, only one sound remained: the slow, deliberate rhythm of footsteps circling him. Michael's chest tightened as he whispered his daughter's name. Sophia, like a prayer, like a shield. Air turned colder, and a voice low and unearthly finally broke through the silence. The child's life for Yorsh's knees weakened, and he realized with horror that the true terms of the bargain had only just been revealed. The whispers grew louder,